Hello there, everybody.
Welcome
to the Cal Report. We're right here from the beautiful Ellie Phillips Library.
Go ahead, Fred. Tell them all about it.
Yes. And we're going to have Larry Nichols on tonight. Larry Nichols, who has been doing some investigating of the Clintons, especially in the Whitewater scandal. And I'm quite sure that he's going to provide us with some excellent information. Yes, we're putting a call through to Larry Nichols down in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yes, we're making a long-distance call to Little Rock, Arkansas, to the home of Larry Nichols. And unfortunately, Larry was doing another live call-in show, so we had to wait till almost 9 o'clock to try and call through, so that's why we're having a little delay here. Of course, being live, it's kind of like the Milton Berle show. It's kind of just what you see is what you get. And now we've got a busy signal. Okay. Okay, Freddie, we're going to get into the show here and then make our call in a minute. All right, today the U.S. House of Representatives started their Banking Commission hearings on the Whitewater affair and some of the things that happened down in Little Rock, Arkansas, Fred, during the tenure of now President Clinton. At that time, he was governor of the state of Arkansas. As you know, there was some shenanigans down there, Fred, according to a lot of people. There was a lot of things that just weren't run right, and a man named Larry Nichols, who was an old friend of Bill Clinton's, was appointed to a cushy job with the Arkansas Development Finance Authority back in the 80s. Of course, Clinton thought that that would be a good place to run some of his schemes through, and unfortunately, Larry didn't go along with it, Fred. So we're going to let you take it back again, Fred, and I'm going to try and get that call again.
All right.
Because we got a busy signal last time.
Yeah, the Whitewater development was one of the schemes that our president, who was then the governor of Arkansas, was trying to put through. And there have been some shenanigans there that have been in the papers, and there's a hearing going on in the House of Representatives at the present time, and Congressman Leach is the chairman, and he's from Iowa, and we're calling Larry Nichols in Little Rock, Arkansas, who had been appointed by the president.
Thank you for using AT&T.
There, we got a call.
Hello.
Larry.
Yes.
Well, we had a rough time getting through to you. I understand you're on another talk show right up till 9.
Yeah, I just got off. I'm stacked up back to back.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you on the program tonight. Sorry for the delay. I was calling with a AT&T calling card here, and we had to make sure that we got through to you.
Okay.
Well, we're glad to have you on once again. And Larry, now you were a close friend of Bill and Hillary Clinton when they were in the governor's mansion in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
And could you tell the viewers exactly what your job was when you were working for the Clintons?
Yeah, let me give just a quick background. I've known
All right.
Hillary since the mid to late 70s, did projects throughout the 80s for them, and in 1988 they created a position, or Bill did, of marketing director at the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, specifically for me. There wasn't one before me, there wasn't one after. When I went to work there, I thought I was to promote that agency, which was to make low-interest, tax-exempt bond loans, to create jobs, create low-income housing. What I found out, I wasn't there to market the agency, I was there for damage control. And the damage, which, by the way, it didn't bother me. Show you I'm not a good guy. It didn't bother me a bit. I figured if I covered it up, I'd get one of the loans like Webb Hubble and his family did for $2.85 million. Don Tyson of Tyson Foods, $10 million, and they didn't pay them back. When I started looking to see if, since people were buying these bonds, if they weren't paying them back, somebody was going to sue. That's when I found out that Bill Clinton's best friend, Dan Lester, was laundering drug money from Mena, Arkansas through the state agency that I worked at. And when I found that out, I went to Bill, couldn't have any part of that, and told him he had 2 weeks to clean it up or tell the truth or I would. They destroyed me in the media. In 1989, I proved that the media and all the things they said wasn't true. And in 1990, I filed, I guess you'd call it the infamous lawsuit that brought Jennifer Flowers, Whitewater. Most of the stuff you hear about today was filed in 1990.
So you were kind of the forerunner of everything that's kind of talked about now. Most of that came true, and some of it is still being revealed, and some is yet to be revealed.
Right.
Now, today the House started their portion of the so-called Whitewater hearings, and what are you? What's your sense of what's going to go on with Jim Leach? He's a rather liberal Republican from the state of Iowa. Do you actually think that they're going to get to the bottom of the whole Whitewater affair?
Well, I had hopes last week. I think you and I talked about it. Leach's people called me. I spent about 14 hours on the phone with them last week. I presented documents. I proved everything that I had said to them. I had to fax some stuff, which I did. They were flabbergasted. I would say also, folks, you'll be scared to death at what they don't know. I kept telling the guy last week, do you realize your hearings start next week and you don't know any of this? I found out today, however, that I will not be testifying.
Okay. Did anyone at all contact you whether to testify or not?
Yeah, Leach's people did. Last week, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
Just today, I called them back, and they're not going to have me testify. They said that Clinton's people would make it a political football since I'm the most renowned Clinton hater, quote unquote, in the world.
Well, you just happen to have some inside information that evidently they don't want to get out to the masses if they can keep it localized. Now, you being in Little Rock, Arkansas, sitting from the inside looking out, you knew the art of cover-up and the art of destroying your enemies because it eventually happened to you yourself.
I guess that's my reward. That's what I did for a living. Or
okay, now, so in 1990, you had a lawsuit and you hired an attorney.
Right.
And that attorney just so happened to live across the hallway from Jennifer Flowers.
Right.
Could you tell the viewers what happened to that attorney that you had hired?
Sure. He was a bit of a special attorney. He called me, and he said during the 1991 campaign that he knew I was telling the truth and he wanted to represent me. He felt bad that I was getting bludgeoned. So when I met him, now this is how quick it happened, folks. Excuse me. I met him. He called me on a Monday. I went and met him on a Tuesday. I found out he wasn't just a regular attorney. He was a special attorney. He was Jennifer Flowers' neighbor. He had a video camera out. He was at the end of a hall. He was in the end apartment. Hers was the first apartment on the right. He had a camera put in his peephole because there was a lot of vandalism in the halls. He caught Bill Clinton going in and out of Jennifer Flowers' apartment with the key on numerous occasions. Of course, had a video of it.
Okay.
On Thursday, we were going to file some motions. He started getting some threatening phone calls, and then I found him on a Saturday. They had three white guys, short haircuts, he says, looked like state police, came in, demanded the tape. At first, he didn't give it to them. They broke both his elbows with karate-type blows. He finally gave them the tape, and then they beat him and left him for dead.
And so he was found, but they got the tape, right?
They got the tape. Well, there's another one, but it doesn't matter.
But they're pretty good at silencing the opposition. So
I've had 3 witnesses that have, were about to testify or talk to reporters that were killed out from under me.
could you go into those 3? Who were those 3?
I'll give you one, for example, to show you. Florence Martin, she was a bookkeeper at Mena. When the Texas Rangers, she was in Seymour, Texas, when the Texas Rangers found her, she had 3 bullet holes in the back of her head. Somebody had pushed her onto the bed, stuck a pillow to the back of her head, and shot her 3 times with a small caliber pistol.
Now she had.
She was a bookkeeper at Mena.
Okay.
It was all over her house. I mean, they didn't rob her, and the only thing they found was my phone number. And of course, she had been communicating with me.
Now, when you mean Mena, was she working for the?
Worked for the aircraft hangar.
Okay, now Mena, Arkansas, for those of you who don't know too much about it, it's still yet to be uncovered fiasco that involves not only the Clinton administration while they were in the governorship of Arkansas, but also it ties in with President George Bush and Oliver North. But Mena, Arkansas was a drug drop point for the Contra. What the deal was the Contras needed arms, and the Congress would not allow arms to be shipped directly with taxpayer money. So a scheme was created where arms were shipped down to the Contras and in South America for the Civil War down there, and in return, cocaine and sometimes money were shipped back to Mena, Arkansas, and from there, the cocaine was distributed throughout the United States, and the money was siphoned off and sent who knows where.
But the money was laundered at the agency I worked at. And at least I found $771 million. I mean, not all of it.
Million?
$771 million through a guy that was Bill Clinton's best friend, Dan Laster.
And you mean Lassiter got a few months in prison for $771 million worth of cocaine?
As a matter of fact, he did, and then when he got out, Bill Clinton gave him a full and complete pardon. And by the way, do you know in the Waco hearings you heard Bill Clinton talking about that little girl that was raped by Koresh or whatever?
Yes.
How bad he said that guy was?
Uh-huh.
Dan Laster, I have the testimony in the grand jury. He didn't go to jail for selling cocaine. He went to jail for giving it away to 14 and 16-year-old girls in exchange for sexual favors.
I understand that the President Clinton and his brother got in on some of those parties.
They did. I mean, we've got testimony after testimony after testimony.
Where there was minors and younger ladies.
Right.
Certainly Hillary wasn't hanging around.
No.
Okay, so that's death number 1 was tied in with the Mena, Arkansas and the drug trafficking.
Now, but now let me clarify something on me.
All right.
I don't know, nor does Terry Reid. We don't know for sure that the government was selling the arms. Well, number one, the cocaine was not coming from the Contras. They would go down. Mena, Arkansas was a refurbishing center for the CIA. They would take aircraft that they used in different theaters for covert missions. When they were through with them, they'd bring them back to Mena. They'd repaint them, give them new serial numbers, new IDs, and then send them somewhere else. What was happening, Barry Seal, who is a guy that is now dead.
Yeah, there was a TV movie made about his story.
There was a movie made about him. He got the contract through Southern Air to fly supplies to the Contras. He would drop off supplies to the Contras, fly over to Colombia and Panama, because obviously those covert flights, when they came back to the States, didn't get checked by the DEA, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what they did, Barry Seal developed this incredible plan, and he would deliver guns and supplies for the government
And bring back coke.
back all dope. in money.
Okay.
Now, when the government found out about it, by the time they found out about what he was doing, here's where they're accomplices. They knew if the American people knew that their supply line was backhauling dope, that they would cut out support for the Contras.
Okay, so they had to
Get it?
keep, so they had to keep that quiet and keep everybody happy and still keep the guns flowing to the Contras.
That's right.
So eventually, it turned into over $700 million, and you say that some of that got siphoned.
ADFA.
Okay, some of that got funneled through ADFA, but how do you hide that much money?
Well, it was more than that. They were running, as the Iran-Contra hearings brought out, about $100 million a month,
Wow.
and that was for some 30 or 40 months.
Boy. Okay, so that's a lot of money. That made a lot of people rich. Now, you said you had two other close associates or people involved with you that were murdered. What's number two?
Well, number two was a doctor, a dentist, actually, in Hot Springs, and I was setting him up to talk with Ambrose Evans Pritchard. He called me. They were supposed to meet on a Friday. He called me on about a Tuesday and said he was scared. It was getting too hot. He had to leave the state. I begged him not to go, but he went. I had to call Ambrose and reschedule for the following Tuesday. I had to call Ambrose Evans Pritchard of the Sunday Telegraph that Sunday in between and tell him not to bother, that the guy had died in a plane crash.
Now, who's Ambrose Pritchard?
He is a reporter for the London Sunday Telegraph, probably the foremost reporter that has written more about the Clintons than anybody in the world.
Now, it's almost like, Larry, that you have to read a foreign newspaper to find out what's going on with this Whitewater thing. I know London's been really on top of this.
It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I don't want to sit and try to say to your audience or anybody that, the media gets in a dark room or a smoke-filled room and plans what will or won't be on the media. But I got to tell you, every media in this nation has the documents I've provided, and you have not seen one story. Not one. If anything, the media does stories to knock us down and to cover for him.
Okay, so now we got a mysterious plane wreck, and was that ever investigated to be an accident or on purpose? Or?
Well, it's an interesting thing. In the same week, two aircraft, almost identical, one carrying Rogers, my guy, and the other carrying a big attorney here in Arkansas that was one of Clinton's people. Both of them crashed exactly the same way. They're flying in the sky, and all of a sudden they just crash. No fire, no nothing.
Okay, what's the
So Friday was the other.
what happened to the third person that you knew?
Well, the third one is more recent, about 6 months ago. Robert Bates. He was testifying to Terry Reed about Mena. He was a mechanic at Mena. He talked to Terry. Terry goes down. His attorney had to leave the town, had to leave Arkansas to go back to New York, so they weren't going to be able to take his discovery when they said. But Terry Reed went on down anyway and talked to him. 2 days later, they found him dead, said that he had drank mouthwash and killed himself.
That's a terrible way to die, that mouthwash.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, now, Larry, they say that, so everyone asks the question why, if there's not only those three that are close to you, but I understand also a photographer that had worked for you.
Right, John Hillier, the man. There wouldn't be a me if there hadn't been a John Hillier.
And he turned up dead here not too long ago.
About 4 weeks ago, he went into his dentist's office and just stopped breathing and died.
Okay, and he was in his 40s, wasn't he?
He was 53,
Okay.
but he was a health food nut. He was a physical fitness kind of guy. I mean, you'd have thought he was young. I'm 45, and you'd have thought he's younger than I was.
Okay, now people want to know what has happened to Larry Nichols since 1990 in this lawsuit? Has there been any personal threats or attacks?
Lord, yeah. I mean, my
against
ribs
you?
have been broken 4 or 5 times.
Your house?
Uh,
What's been broken?
ribs.
Oh,
I've been mugged and poisoned. I was in the hospital for a week, had some kind of pesticide poisoning. That's why my voice sounds like it does. But you can't prove Clinton did it, so you can't allege that he did that.
Now with that
Just muggable kind of guy, I guess.
with that pesticide poisoning, I understand that your symptoms are similar to the Desert Storm troops that are coming back. Some of those same symptoms, and that what Hussein used on the troops over there was a similar substance.
I don't know about that, but my symptoms were simply this. You end up with hives, but they're on the inside of your lungs, and you stop breathing. And then you have to go to the hospital immediately, and they have to give you like adrenaline, and you can start breathing.
Now you normally you're not around pesticides. You don't work on a farm. You're a city boy, and yet here you come down with an insecticide poisoning.
Right. Pretty weird.
Okay, now there are rumors, Larry, that there's something like I've seen on the internet that there's a 35 name body count. It seems to be continued to be added to. Have you?
Oh, it's about 40 plus now.
These are people.
Again, let's be very careful.
Okay.
You and I are not saying that Clinton had anybody killed. These are people that die, for example, of cutting their head off with a kitchen knife, and it's ruled a suicide. And if you take all of these people, what makes them mysterious deaths is that they're all somehow friends or connected to Clinton. And it seems to be that anybody that's a real close friend to Clinton that's about to talk, or an acquaintance of Clinton that knows something that's about to talk, commits suicide. And they do it in a funny way. Cut their head off with a kitchen knife, shoot themselves in the back of the head, that kind of stuff.
Those kind of unusual suicides.
Yeah.
Now, I know there was another unusual one that was a little more well publicized here recently, was Al Gore's, one of his confidants and Walter Mondale's confidants jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and left behind a brand new automobile,
Yeah.
a Lexus or whatever it is. He was in his 40s and quite a flamboyant character, and they said he had everything to live for and nothing to die for, but he's come up with what I call the CIA flu. I don't know what you call it, but
Well, I don't know, but it did happen, and I guess we're avoiding maybe the most famous of all suicides, which is that of Vince Foster.
we were going to go into that. Now that's been pretty much taken care of in the hearings that have been going on for the last couple of weeks over in the Senate. It appears like D'Amato is not going to really dig in and get to the bottom of this. But in a way, you want D'Amato to get to the bottom of it, but in another way, that I personally feel like I wouldn't put it past them to take D'Amato out. Now, he had a mysterious heart attack a few months ago, and then it was revealed to the media, to the public, that he'd had a mistress while being married to his former wife. He had a mistress that just happens to be Jewish and a millionaire, but the press played it up like D'Amato sneaking around with this Jewish millionaire, which doesn't really have nothing to do with, Jewish doesn't have anything to do with it. But anyway, it was an attempt to smear D'Amato, and it almost appears now like they've gotten to D'Amato, and he's not going to get to the bottom of it.
Well, let me say this. Relative to Vince Foster, folks, I don't know if he killed himself or somebody killed him. But here's what I know, and here's what I can prove. And listen to me tight. Vince Foster did not die in Fort Marcy Park the way they said he did. And you might say, well, how can I prove it? I think you've got the Secret Service memo. The top, it's titled 2551. That's the Senate Banking Committee file number from when they investigated Vince Foster's death, so it's not something they don't know about. And in the second paragraph, here's what it says. I don't have it in front of me, but I can nearly quote it. On 7/20/93, unknown time, the body of Vincent Foster was found in his car in the Fort Marcy area near the George Washington Turnpike. Vince Foster apparently committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. A .38 caliber revolver was found in the car. Now, that is a far cry from him, supposedly, according to the FBI and the Robert Fisk report, pulling into the parking lot at Fort Marcy Park, walking some 700 feet on a dirt trail, and by the way, according to that same report, did not get 1 microscopic speck of dust on his shoes, sat down on a bank by a berm, as they call it, by a cannon, depending on which cannon, they change cannons on us, shot himself in the head.
And evidently when they found him, the blood trickle had run uphill.
The blood coming from his nose ran up towards his ear, and the blood from his mouth ran up towards his eye, with him laying at about an 18-degree angle with his feet below his head.
I understand also that his body was covered with carpet fibers of some type, like they'd roll him in a carpet and hauled him out there and dumped him or something.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
It sounds like something we've
Number
seen.
one, how did he get 700 feet? If they didn't carry him, how did he get 700 feet without getting a speck? And I'm talking about a microscopic speck of dust on his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You
Then he,
do it.
on top of that, he was kind of laid out like he was already in a funeral parlor.
Well, they said when I first came out with the Circle of Power video,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about the inconsistencies of the body, and I said that the gun was in the wrong hand. ABC released, which is the only time they've ever been shown, pictures of, sort of like the crotch to the belly button, showing the revolver in his right hand.
Mm-hmm.
Here was the problem with that picture. There were leaves, red and gold and brown leaves all around the hand and the body.
So it could have been a
He
doctor.
died on July the 20th.
It could have been a doctored photo of somebody else.
Well, there were no leaves on the ground
Yeah.
in July at that park. Not to mention the fact that I had the Secret Service memo the whole time. So, I knew they were lying with the picture, but I just didn't know how to prove it.
So there could be a possibility that he was either forced to commit suicide or was actually murdered. They found this bogus suicide note something like 4 or 6 days later.
Well, now that's weird, too.
Just conveniently, it had the name, the one piece, it was torn into, 28 pieces, and one of them was missing.
Which was the one with his signature.
And the piece that was missing was the one that had supposedly his signature on it, signing off on his own death warrant there.
Right, and
Yeah.
not one fingerprint. And I dare anybody to do it. Paper is a great receptacle for fingerprints. Take a piece of paper, anybody that's listening, tear it in half, and tell me how you did it without getting a fingerprint on it. Now, in his case, he tore it, as you said, in 28 pieces without a fingerprint on one of them.
And threw it in the bottom of a briefcase, which they looked through several times, and lo and behold, 6 days later, it turns up in that same briefcase.
Well, and there's another little story about the briefcase that D'Amato and them have not told you. The briefcase was found, if you go to the police report, when they found the body supposedly at 6:02. Remember that time, because we'll get into it in a minute. When they found the body at 6:02, when the police came to make the ID, Park Police, they went to the car. They found his suit coat laying over the seat, a bottle of wine cooler, a 4-pack of wine coolers with one missing, and his briefcase in the car. They found his wallet, and that's how they ID'd him, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that briefcase end up in his office 4 to 6 days later when they found the note?
Well, that's just,
How did it do it?
that's the magic of Bill Clinton and Hillary.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Larry, I'm going to take the first call here, and I'm going to have to put you on hold while I take it because we got kind of an antiquated system here with only 2 lines.
Okay.
So this will give you a chance to grab a glass of water if you like.
All right.
I'll take this caller's call, and then we'll relay it back to you.
Very good.
Okay, just a second. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Interesting program. Say, I'd like to have you ask him a question on why is press covering this up like they're doing? And second is, does he think that there will be enough information to come out that will remove Bill Clinton from office? Thank you.
In the form of an impeachment or just a loss at the polls?
Well, maybe they should take him to court with an indictment or something if he's guilty. And then you could ask him, will this look bad for the Republicans if they help try to cover this up?
Okay, thanks a lot, caller. Larry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this caller wants to know, why do you think the press is helping cover this up nationwide? A lot of what we're finding out from you and other brave individuals out there that are willing to get the word out. Why do you think the mainline press is covering this up?
Well, I don't want to come across as saying that the media gets in a room, as I told you earlier. But here's what I believe we can attribute it to. 10 years ago, maybe 15, there were 2,200, as an example, 2,250 independently owned newspapers. Today, the same 2,000, it's not 2,200 anymore, but the same 2,000 newspapers are owned by the same 50 people.
They seem to be swallowing them up, don't they?
Well, now, you take a big clue is look at NAFTA and GATT. The same people that profited and benefited from NAFTA, GATT, and the Mexican bailout. That's what they are. The same people that own those the same 50 people and corporations that own the media, the newspapers.
Now, one of those media magnates cut a deal with Newt Gingrich to, well, you know, it was a several $million deal to write 2 books, and Newt had to back off and take $1 and then wait for the royalties to come in. But that guy...
Now, that's Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, Murdoch's going to come back before the same House eventually on some legislation that could affect his industry directly, and a lot of people are saying Newt's in a conflict of interest. But that shows you how high they can get and how they can buy people off. And, I mean, you lay $4 million in anybody's lap, a lot of people will take that and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly the way it works. Now, as you know, Rupert Murdoch has not been exactly one of the Clinton favorite people. However, it's equally as wrong for Gingrich to be bought out as Clinton.
That's
but
right.
You, at least with Gingrich, you see how it works.
He's a little more open.
Right.
You know, I think it's maybe that the Republicans just haven't learned how to steal as good as the Democrats.
Well,
but they're catching up.
Yes. Remember this. The day Bob Dole announced that he was running for president, it was in the paper that his campaign co-finance chair is none other than Jackson Stephens. Jackson Stephens, folks, is the same power broker. There's 3 power brokers behind Bill Clinton. Jack Stephens, Don Tyson, and Dan Laster.
And Tyson owns the biggest chicken operation in the world.
Right.
Stephens is he's a billionaire, isn't he?
As the largest stock brokerage firm outside of Wall Street in the world.
And Dan Lassiter must have a few million hid back from all the money he helped funnel.
You bet.
So now, I just heard recently, since we're getting into the Stephens and the Tysons, just a couple of weeks ago, Stephens and Tyson both jumped off the Clinton bandwagon, jumped on the Dole bandwagon.
Yeah, that's a lie. What happened, we had a reporter that had found out, we had proof that Stephens and Tyson were putting big dollars into Republicans. Just so happened it was the same Republicans that were investigating them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when that reporter called them for their comment, the next day, they break with the story that the reason they were doing it was because it was bad business since Clinton had been elected president.
Mm-hmm.
That was their spin.
All right. Well, this caller that called in, he wanted to know another quick answer to a question. Do you think that there's enough to either impeach Clinton or cause him to lose in the '96 election? Impeach him now, or is he a lame duck?
Well, I mean, there's enough to impeach him, and he will win '96.
I know I've heard you say that on other national talk shows. Now, what makes you believe that with all this garbage coming out there between Hillary and Bill and all the crooks and the murderers and everything, how does it appear that Bill Clinton could win in '96?
All right. If I prove it, will you believe me?
Oh, I guess I'll have to. I can prove it.
All right. Bill Clinton, right now, with everything that has come out, his popularity is 40%, right? Lower than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is after all of the scandals, all of the stuff that's come out. You understand that if he was caught kissing the Pope, the Democratic base, the welfare, all of that will not fall below 40%, 40 to 43%, right?
Yeah, there's that certain amount that'll continue to vote for him,
No matter what.
right?
Now, all Bill Clinton's got to do is get a third-party candidate. And what does it take to win? 34%. And he knows it.
And there's a billionaire candidate just waiting out there chomping at the bit again.
Having a little convention this weekend, which is his, if you'll go back just like he did before, he'll get all of the parties there, both of the parties. He'll come out saying that they can't get together on anything. And therefore, his people in United We Stand will ask him to run, and Bill Clinton wins again.
Okay, now,
Laughing at us.
why, the caller wanted to know this other question, why aren't the Republicans willing to dig deeper into the Mena, Arkansas, Whitewater, all the other, I read a 4-part series from the Arkansas newspaper. It came out last fall. Give you the names of the people, you probably know them. It's Mary Hargrave, Don Johnson, and Michael Whiteley from the Arkansas Democratic Gazette staff writers.
Right.
Wrote a 4-part article back last fall, and it's about Tucker and Whitewater, and it just goes into one rotten deal after another. David Hale's Capital Management Services,
Right.
Jim McDougall's Madison Guarantee Savings. I mean, they've got enough stuff here to indict this guy 5 times over if you compare it to the little rinky-dink thing that President Nixon did.
Right.
So why aren't the Republicans going for the throat?
Well, one problem that you have, and I think it's quite obvious, if they prove Mena, right? I mean, if they prove it, Mena took place during 2, I repeat, 2 Republican administrations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, withstanding the fact that they're all on the make, probably, in the take, as we know from Tyson and Stevens, but the Republicans aren't going to go too far into Mena because they're afraid it will expose the Republicans.
Well, you got a guy named George Bush and another guy named Oliver North that was involved with the Contra deal, which probably ties him into Barry Seals and Mena.
You got it. It was on their watch.
So they can't get around it. So you're saying that the Republicans will go just so far, they'll kind of skirt that issue, maybe skirt a couple other ones, and hope they can throw enough mud on Bill and Hillary to cause them to be discredited enough to lose in '96.
Let me scare you. How would you like to be me? How would you like to have the Democrats hate you? How would you like to have the Republicans hate you because you're trying to expose all the stuff that went on during their watch? And how would you like to have, as late as last week in front of 2 Secret Service agents, Bill Clinton throw a conniption fit, swear he'd get me if it's the last thing he did? And he's the most powerful man in the world.
Doesn't sound good. Have you got any bodyguards?
Good Lord, no.
You're just relying on the Lord for your protection, huh?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you about, back...
As long as I'm talking to you and you're letting me talk to your audience, it helps protect me.
Well, not only you, but a guy named William Dannemeyer, who was a congressman from California from 1979 to 1992. He retired just before the Republican landslide. He said flat out that President William Clinton is a pathological liar,
Right.
a womanizer, a drug user, and a draft dodger, and the only right thing to do would be for the Congress, the U.S. House, to start impeachment proceedings against not only President Clinton, but against Janet Reno for her cover-up of this whole issue.
That's right.
You agree with that?
You bet. I mean, I know Bill Dannemeyer.
Uh-huh.
I say I know him. I have met him. And he's telling you the absolute truth. Number one, Bill Clinton is a pathological liar. Don't believe me. Believe your own eyes. Tell me one thing he's ever said since he's been elected that was the truth. He's a womanizer, we know that. He's a draft dodger. We know that.
Uh-huh.
If you believe he didn't inhale, then I got property to sell you. All of his friends are either pedophiles or drug dealers. He's a dangerous man. He's sick, mentally sick.
I understand his brother did a lot of procuring of the various females for him and some of the drugs back in the wild days of when he was sneaking around behind Hillary's back there.
Right.
Or was he even sneaking around? Did Hillary know what was going on?
Oh, of course. They had a... He did whoever he wanted to, and she did the same.
Okay, I got a question from my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred Stafford. Now, what do you got to ask, Fred?
Well, did Vince Foster, was he involved in an affair with Hillary?
Yes, sir. We have the two troopers, Roger Perry and Larry Patterson, who were on Bill Clinton's personal bodyguards, when he was governor. We have their statements that Vince and Hillary had a long-standing sexual affair. Now, what I say on my last video, hopefully the last one I'll ever do, Nichols versus Clinton, if he killed him, I mean, again, I've said I don't know whether he killed himself or somebody killed him, but if he did kill himself, here's what we do know. He left his office at 1 o'clock, right? 12:30 that day, 30 minutes before he left, a feed came out from a New York paper saying that the Washington Times the next morning was going to do a major expose on Vince and Hillary's love affair. Now, as it turns out, there was no such story, but he didn't know that. Now, if you were going to kill yourself, would you kill yourself over the Wall Street Journal article a month earlier called Travelgate, up over the fact that your affair with the First Lady was going to be exposed and it was going to destroy your family, your wife, and your children, and the President and his wife?
Well, it appears like Vince was in between a rock and a hard place. I mean, he knew a lot of stuff that had went on that it was illegal, and on the other hand, he didn't want to cause the president to roll over, so he had to take the rap for this. Now, either he was taken out of the way or he committed suicide to take the rap for the Clintons.
In either case, if they moved that body, and we know they did, that's a crime. That's obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence. Now, remember when I told you earlier about when they found the body at 6:02? I turned over to Leach's committee last week the sworn affidavit about a lady named Helen Dickey. Helen Dickey was the former nanny for Chelsea when Clinton was governor and went with them to Washington when he got elected. She called back to Arkansas and told our sitting governor, Jim Guy Tucker, who, by the way, has been indicted over Whitewater, that Vince Foster had taken off work, gone out to his car in the parking lot of the White House, and killed himself. Now, there's two problems with what she told Jim Guy Tucker, plus, if you ask how I know it, we have Roger Perry's sworn affidavit. He took the phone call. There's two problems. Number one, she said the White House parking lot, which is quite different from laying on the bank out in Fort Marcy, and it's different than in the car of Fort Marcy. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume she was upset and she confused in the car in the parking lot of Fort Marcy with the parking lot of the White House. Let's give her that. Here's the real problem. She made that phone call at 5:48 Washington time, which is 15 minutes before they even found the body. And we have the phone logs to prove it.
So there's a discrepancy there with the time.
Yeah, I would say a pretty big one.
Have you...
Not to mention, 2 weeks ago, they screwed up in Senator Alphonse D'Amato's hearings when they had David Watkins, chief of administration for Clinton, before he was forced to resign for the helicopter incident, taking the helicopter one to go play golf. David Watkins testified in D'Amato's hearings. He said to Senator Bond upon a question, he said, I called Patsy Thomason at about 10:34 to get her to search Vince Foster's office for a suicide note. He said, I knew that for some 5 hours, the Park Police and Secret Service had been looking for a suicide note. Now, if you take 5 hours from 10:34, what time do you get? 5:34, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 30 minutes before he dies, or before they even find the body. Now, here's the chronology. His body was discovered at 6:02. They didn't even ID who he was until 7:30, and the official call to the from the Park Police to the Secret Service wasn't until 8:30.
Sounds like
Lying.
Sounds like
Lying,
somebody.
and I can prove it. They're lying, and you can prove it. But who are you going to call?
It's kind of like
Call.
when you see a cop do something. Who are you going to tell? He's a cop. You're kind of out there on your own unless you can get enough, like you say, unless you can get enough people to rise up and call their congressmen and women.
Well, people are calling their congressman. The congressman call me. But who are you going to call?
I guess we'll have to call the voters in '96. Now, I want to get. Have you heard anything from Sherman Skolnick and from a senior editor of Forbes magazine who recently wrote an article saying that Vince Foster was involved in selling top American secrets to the Israelis? That's the latest story that's going around. It was just written a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, by Jim Norman, and I don't know. I mean, that's something that I can't prove. I mean, I don't know. I will say this about the article. You're talking to a guy right here that during the 70s was rolling drunk with Foster. In the article, while part of the article I know to be true, but there are parts of it that, you know, I just can't hardly believe, like he was working for the Mossad in the 70s. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was, but it...
Yeah, he'd have to have been pretty careful about it, who he told and everything.
Yeah, I mean, but here again, that's theirs and not mine.
Okay, Larry, getting back to Arkansas and the way business is run down there, I understand that a man that was hired as a he was in charge of security in the Little Rock, Arkansas area for the president and vice president during the '92 presidential elections. And he kept a dossier on the Clintons from something like '82 up to '91, '92. And can you tell the viewers what happened to him?
Yeah, that's Luther Jerry Parks. Luther Jerry Parks, folks, was had the contract for security for the presidential campaign headquarters and then the transition headquarters. He was a private investigator. One evening, he was driving home, a car pulled up. They shot him twice. He pulled over on the side of the road. They got out of the car and shot him 8 more times. I was sitting with Jerry Parks' son, Gary, when he went to the police in Little Rock told his son that it was definitely a professional hit, but just get used to that. They wouldn't know who did it because they'd been ordered from the higher-ups to pull off of it.
Wasn't his house ransacked after that?
Oh, yeah, his house had been burglarized, still looking for, supposedly, Jerry Parks made 3 copies of the file, and the file included pictures of Clinton. He had followed him, and he had taken pictures of him doing drugs and doing women. And there were 3 copies of the file, and nobody's seen them since.
So he had the goods on him under what they call the bimbo eruptions.
And not only bimbo, but the drugs and stuff. Not selling drugs, but using them.
Uh-huh. So getting into the bimbo eruptions, you kind of reveal some of that in your court case. And
yeah, all of the women, Jennifer Flowers and all of that, came from my lawsuit in 1990.
And they had to quiet down a lot of that. I understand one of the females involved was threatened with her beautiful legs being broke.
Sally Perdue, former Miss Arkansas. She was coming out. As a matter of fact, she had talked to ABC, which, by the way, you never saw the story. And she did the Sally Jesse Raphael program, which got blocked and didn't get run. And she was told by a person who was high on Clinton's political campaign in Missouri that if she kept talking, her little legs would be broken, and somebody blew out her window of her car and left a shotgun shell in the seat.
So she kind of kept quiet then after that.
She hadn't been seen that much of since.
Okay, now, you just spoke in Las Vegas Friday night, didn't you?
Sure did.
I understand there was about 1,500 enthusiastic people in the audience there. Can you reveal anything new that's came out in the last few weeks that we haven't talked about tonight?
Well, no, I didn't really reveal anything new, but it was a heck of a program, and there were a lot of people.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, now, one other thing I wanted to get into is this Rose Law Firm. It ties in, pretty much ties in a lot of the players in Whitewater and some of the other shenanigans that were going on down there in Arkansas. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Rose Law Firm was set up for, who ran it, and what their job was down there in Arkansas? It probably still is.
Oh, employed Hillary and Vince and Hubble, and they were the front door. I mean, they were where all the deals had to be cleared. Remember, everybody during the campaign, they were trying to find out how Clinton, who didn't seem to care about money. That was why most politicians, they can find them taking money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clinton, they could never find that. The reason you couldn't is because Bill didn't take it. Hillary did through the Rose Law Firm.
So Hillary was kind of the money person in the deal.
He was the money person.
She needed to find a lot of money for his campaigns, didn't she?
Well, for his campaigns and other things.
Uh-huh. Well, I want to get on to something.
An account right now.
Uh-huh.
The PIN number and the account number is soon to be published. It's in the Cayman Islands, in the Fuji Bank, Grand Cayman Islands. $50 million in person.
Say it's going to be revealed that there's $50 million in a bank account controlled by the Clintons in the name of their...
Not saying controlled by the Clintons. It's in the name of Chelsea Jefferson. Now, go figure.
And there was, I think, $50 million that was missing out of Chicago or sent from Chicago down to Arkansas to help cover up some of the losses down in Arkansas from some of the dealings.
There was a savings and loan that was in receivership in Chicago.
Run by one of Hillary's relatives or something, wasn't it?
I think it was her brother, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
And when Madison was about to be investigated by the RTC or by the regulators, and they were short money, that Chicago firm had in reserves some $60 million. $50 million was transferred to Madison to cover its shortfalls when it was investigated by the RTC. Now, the money never went back to Chicago.
So they got the money in there just in time to cover up before the bank examiners could find it.
Right.
But eventually that bank went under, and McDougal's wife, I think, was found guilty, and McDougal's still under indictment, or he's still negotiating to make a deal. We've already got Webster Hubble, who some say was actually Janet Reno's boss, and they put Reno out front because she was easy to be blackmailed. She was running things. So we're getting down now to the end of the program here, Larry, and it all dovetails down now to where we've got these two hearings going on. One's going to run about another week. We don't know how long the House hearings will run, probably not too much longer than that, but what, if anything, is going to come out of that? And what one person wanted to know is, will there be anybody that runs against Clinton on the Democratic side?
I doubt it, not on the Democratic side. If Bill Clinton is not forced out of office, nobody on this earth will touch him, and he knows it. Now, I thought D'Amato's hearings were going to run through February. I mean, they're not going to be constant, but they're sporadic.
Yeah, maybe this round is ending this week.
Right.
Maybe they want to kind of take the back seat and let the House hearings get running here.
There's only one thing that I would beg your audience to do. Number one, well, two things. Number one, I need you all to call 1-800-505-TAPE, T-A-P-E. You get Nichols versus Clinton, 90-minute video. plus you get 150 pages of all the documents I told you about tonight, the Secret Service memo, everything. It's $29.95 plus shipping and handling. That's number one, so that you've got the documents in your hand. And then the second thing, call Leach, call D'Amato, and demand that I testify.
Well, we've got a page on the internet for you, Larry, and we've got people putting the pressure on through that way. A lot of people read the internet. Since you brought up Jim Leach's name, he is the liberal Republican from Iowa who's the head of these House hearings. His phone number is 202-225-6576. And one person called in and wants to know, we got about 5 minutes left, he wants to know, does Clinton still have illegal dealings in Arkansas, or is he frying bigger fish now?
Oh, no. Last summer, the DEA out of Florida called me, and there were planes, C-130s, 4 or 5 of them, I can't remember now, that were coming into Mena full of... One of the biggest mistakes everybody can make, if you understand that there was a Mena, if you understand that all the people around Clinton laundering money, drug dealers, etc., they've won. He's president. It didn't stop. It's bigger than ever. Why do you think all of these cartel people are being arrested all of a sudden? It's a turf war. Clinton's guys have control. It's bigger than it's ever been.
You said there could even be, well, our representative from Wisconsin, his name's Toby Roth, today said that Bill Clinton was part of the Arkansas Mafia. Now,
Dixie Mafia.
And that killing people, really, that's one of the least of their problems. The biggest problem is what to do with all the money they rake in from all the various illegal banking schemes and drug schemes and whatever they're into.
Remember this, BCCI, everybody's heard about that. Do you know who brought that to this country? Jack Stevens. He's the man that introduced BCCI to America.
So you think that Jack Stevens is probably still playing both? He's throwing money to Dole and Clinton, hoping one or the other will win, basically?
Well, he's putting money into Dole. I mean, big people like that play both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, by backing Dole, putting his money into Bob Dole, which he did, by the way, in 1988 as well, by putting money into Bob Dole, he guarantees that the Republicans don't get too hard on Clinton and don't look too far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dole's the leader of the Republican Party.
Well, they don't want to open up any doors that say Stevens on them either. That, you know, that keeps those doors closed.
Yes, it does.
You know, I ran for Congress up here against Representative Steve Gunderson, he's on an agriculture committee, and he's taken money from Tyson, but Tyson spread that money all over the Congress. All four, probably, I don't know if all 435 of them have received money from Tyson, but a big hunk of legislators in Washington have taken Tyson money.
Oh, you bet.
On both sides of the fence there. Well, Larry, we just got a couple minutes left here now. I wanted to mention the 3 videos that you've been involved with. The first one was Circle of Power. Some of you probably saw that through Jerry Falwell's television program. Then came the Clinton Chronicles, and now there's one called Nichols versus Clinton. And with that third one comes a book with a lot of facts and figures in it. And if anyone wants those now, or they want to talk to you any further, you say there's an 800 number, so you want to give that number one more time?
800-505-TAPE, T-A-P-E. I don't know what the numbers are, it's just tape.
And they can find out about those tapes and things.
They can find out about the tapes, and I'll tell you this, everything that I've said tonight, all the documents to prove are in the exhibit book that you get with the video.
Now, I understand that video and that exhibit book have been sent to most of the Congress and the Senate, House and Senate.
Every one of them.
So they've all got a copy of it, so they can't claim ignorance.
Well, they do claim ignorance. They claim that, you know, it got sent to the office, but they didn't get it.
So some of them still don't claim that they still didn't have it.
Right.
Well, Larry, we want to thank you for being on tonight's program. I know that you've just been nonstop now for several years doing TV and radio and newspaper interviews, and I know it wears you down, so we're going to let you go and so you can get a good night's sleep and get back at it again tomorrow. We appreciate your time tonight, and we want to thank you very much, and we wish the best of luck to you and the protection that You deserve to continue to get out the word to the American people. So we want to thank you for...
Thank you for having me, and I hope we can do it again. I hope it didn't bore your audience.
Well, I don't think so. We had the phone lines jammed all the way through. So we appreciate your being on tonight, and we'll see if we can do it again real quick here, because I plan on going nationwide on a radio shortwave hookup here through Media Bypass starting in September. So maybe we can get you back on in September.
That'll work.
All right, we appreciate it. Well, thanks a lot, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye now.
Good night, y'all.
Okay, thanks a lot for tuning in tonight. We appreciate your viewing, appreciate your calls, and we'll see you again right here on the Cow Report next Monday. So adios, 2 p.m. Goodbye.
Bye now.